In her speech to striking coal miners in the year of 1912, the steps of the Capitol building in Charleston, West Virginia, Mary Harris Mother Jones delivers the following. The labor movement was not originated by man. The labor movement, my friends, was a command from God Almighty. The rest of her speech, like the one delivering it, retains that same sense of being larger than life. Amidst the laying out of their grievances, she shames her audience, lays out her own deeds, and speaks of fire and fury should the demands of the miners not be met. She rages and rails against the forces of capital that have brought about the great myriad of woes she has been witness to, and heralds the coming of a glorious and nobler world with the unity of the working class. She delivered that speech to a veritable army of militant strikers, and though her words were of fire and retribution, she cautioned her court against violence. She gave the governor a day to respond to the miners' demands of increased wages, better conditions, and recognition of their union. I was saddened to learn that was not how the story ended. Mother Jones was an almost mythic figure in the labor movement of her time, and could be the subject of an essay all her own. But I am more concerned with this speech than I am about her story. The speech of herself was part of her work to rally and unify workers during the Painted Creek to Cabin Creek strike of 1912. The context behind the strike is by no means unique for the period. Coal mines were practically settlements unto themselves. Every business and home that services those who worked the mines were owned by the owners and operators of the mine. Almost every facet of the existence for these miners served to enrich those who owned those mines. Mining, in those days especially, was a exceedingly dangerous working environment. Virginia mines boasted higher death rates than American forces in World War I. In such context, it seems fair for the miners of Painted Creek to ask for a raise, especially considering they made less than other mines in the area, but the owners disagreed, and a strike began in earnest. The violence visited upon the workers by the private militias that the owners brought to bear against those strikers is the chief object of concern in Mother Jones' speech at the Capitol, the part that she most directly addressed to the governor. She said that they would take it into their own hands should Governor William Glasscock not intercede on the miners' behalf. He did not, and the miners' efforts to wrest some semblance of justice and self-determination from their corporate masters was in vain. The only thing of substance that can be said to have come from this strike is the death that brought about. It's a death brought about by explicit violence from the militia and the strikers themselves in some cases, and the conditions that strikers were forced to live in. That and more fuel for the labor conflict in West Virginia that would culminate in 1912, or 1921 rather, at the Battle of Blair Mountain, which was one of the largest instances of civil conflict in American history, second only to the American Civil War. The period from 1912 to 1921 would come to be known as the West Virginian Coal Wars and would result in little to no gain for the labor movement. Perhaps you could call it a teaching moment for the labor movement moving forward and attribute the successes that it would have in coming decades to, at least in some part, all that working class blood spilled on Virginian soil. But for some reason that rings hollow for me. Maybe because I doubt that the miners who fought and died felt very vindicated after private aircraft had dropped homemade bombs on them at the Battle of Blair Mountain, after which the United States military showed up with bombers that had been used to drop perfect gas and bombs on German soldiers not 4 years prior in the First World War, munitions that they now threatened to drop on the miners, many of whom fought in that war. I doubt they felt vindicated after the dust settled and none of their goals were met, that they were hunted and tried for crimes that were perpetrated against them before they sought any justice in return. That the ones who instigated this whole thing, that poked and prodded and caused more death and destruction than any union could hope to achieve, were the ones who were being vindicated in this conflict. I suppose that Mother Jones' speeches bears some responsibility for this, not for the events themselves, but the feelings those events inspire in me. Her words elicited a fervor in me that few other works in this class have, and I can imagine that it would still pale to the effect that it had on the workers present. Mother Jones calls what moves them divine, and their goal inevitable in ways that make me believe her almost a century later when her promised land has still not come. I guess I'm just sad that I cannot read that speech again without being reminded that those who heard her words would either be dead or disappointed before the year was out. I'm sad that stories of the righteous oppressed fighting for a better tomorrow seem to so often to end the same way. I am sad that the stories of good triumphing over evil that form such a vast bulk of the art that has shaped me so often seem to be lies. But even that sadness could be described as being a product of those stories. That there exists reward for the doing of good for those who do it is an invention. Indeed, there should be, but there often isn't. There is no true, reliable method for the accounting of works and weighing of deeds, not in our world, perhaps not even in the next. Yet there are those who resist anyway, and rarely do they not stand divorced from the fruits of their great labor, should there be any at all. They do so not because victory is assured, but because it must be done. In this way, resistance is a leap of faith, the greatest one can make. Faith that the forces of this world will bend to justice, faith that life can be free and beautiful, faith that the rightness of one's acts will mean anything in the face of the turning of the wheel of history, faith in the goodness of mankind, that we can make a world that isn't as terrible as it seems. In this way, Mary Jones is right. The labor movement is of the divine, and maybe its victory is inevitable. But if she is not, the fight will be fought anyway, because it must be fought. Thank you.